All right, welcome back. This is the Youniversalife Podcast, and this is episode number 8, I think. We sort of get lost sometimes and don't know exactly where we're at because I take significant time off from recording episode to episode, but we're back at it, and something new has shown up, which is some video that I'm trying to get up and running and has proven to be very difficult because I've got this 4K camera over here that is awesome, but then I've got this computer that I guess is behind in the time, doesn't have a whole lot of new technology with it. So the 4K, there is no 4K. So I've got like this grainy video going on just because I want my mouth to align with the video and what I'm saying and it not lag behind and look really bad. So if it looks grainy, that's because the resolution's turned down pretty low. So we chalk this up to all being part of the process. Learning curve, whatever. Hopefully, episodes to come, 9, 10, 11, whatever, we'll have video with the actual podcast itself. And the quality will be a lot better, but you know the object here is just to go, just to record and get moving and start making some episodes. Last time I was on here, I'm sitting here talking about how I'm going to keep cranking episodes out. Well, life happens and things occur, and time passes, and I haven't made any more episodes up until this point. So here we are. And I thank you for joining us today. But I wanted to talk about something that I had mentioned in the previous episode, and that was the Elite Football Coaching blog series that I had made. And I've sort of finalized that. That was a 15-part series in the end. And the reason I bring that back up, if you haven't went over to the website at Youniversalife.com, please do so and check that out. You've got 15 blog posts there that you can comb through and look at, and it's mainly geared towards coaches that are just getting into the profession, things to look for, things that can help you set up for success. And, I encourage you to go check it out. And here lately, what I've really been working on, I haven't just not been doing anything. I haven't been recording episodes, but I've sort of been in the lab and I'm trying to create an ebook or electronic book, Kindle, whatever you want to call it, where you can pull the book itself up on your phone. You can download it onto your phone or any device, and you can read it from there. So instead of it just being located directly on my website, what I've done is taken that 15-part blog series and I've compressed it into a book where it actually looks legit. It's got a lot of bells and whistles to it, looks really nice, professional, and it's something that you can download and even print off on your own and carry it around with you if you wish. You can share it with other people. So that's what I've been working on, and that is super time consuming, and it's the first book that I've ever put together. Even though it started as a blog series, I reverse engineered it and made it into a book. So I've always said I wanted to write a book. Well, I'm writing a book, and it's about 50 pages long, so it's not like this massive thing. Self-published. I'm not having any help. Don't want any help as far as piecing it all together. There may be some typos in there or whatnot, but like I mentioned earlier, it's part of the process of creating, putting things together, and that's what I'm about. And I'm trying to send that message into the world about how creating things helps in so many ways and helps you develop as a person and become the better version of you. And I try to live that daily. So I want to pass that on to you, and that's something that's coming down the road. Maybe within the next month, I'll release it in the ebook format where you'll be able to go to my website, maybe even Amazon. I'm gonna charge a small fee for it, just because you can download it, and it is nice and organized, and it looks really good. And it's taken me a lot of time to put together, so that is coming. And in this episode alone, I wanted to go over actual subject matter that I talked about within those posts or in that book. Things that you can expect if you go and look at it. So what I'm looking at here on my notes down here at the bottom that's where my eyes keep dropping. I have a blog post brainstorm or a brain dump. And before I even started this entire blog series, I started writing down some of the things that I wanted to share or potentially share. And I wanted to go back to that, bring all that up or bring it to the surface. So as you go and look at the actual book, you can see how all that came to life. So my initial notes here, it says, what makes a good football coach? I think that's like at the root of why I wanted to write this. Like, what goes into making a good coach? Because there are so many things that make a terrific coach. And all coaches are different, but a lot of them have similarities, and I wanted to talk about that because I've coached for a long time, over 13 seasons, and I've had the privilege of being around a lot of great guys, and all of them were different, all brought their own unique style to the profession. And I wanted to talk about some of the things that they brought to the table, and even things that I thought I was good at, or continue to be good at. That's my phone over here kicking on. But I wanted to share that. And some of the other notes, it says, how can I become a good football coach? What skills do you need to be a football coach? What are the qualities of a good football coach? So those are 4 questions right out of the gate that I wanted to answer. And when I was before I even thought about writing a book or blogging in general, I always thought to myself, how do people write books? How do you crank out so many words and put them down and organize it to where it's good and it flows? Like, it just blew my mind how people were able to do that. Like, what's your strategy to piece it together? So this is sort of my strategy and how it started. And it started with 4 questions. And from those 4 questions, I did a little bit of research. So I took those and I plugged them into Google. And Google spits out, certain websites or blogs that had already written on those topics a little bit. And some of the things I stumbled upon were 11 qualities that every good coach should have. So there was a blog post that was labeled that, and I went in and I read through that, and I thought it was pretty good. And they were interviewing like NFL guys or players and what they thought a good football coach exhibited. But when you're talking about NFL and you're talking about collegiate coaches, and then you talk about high school and then on down, all of them are a little bit different, and they have different players that they're teaching. So their strategy and the deliverance is going to be a little bit different. So it's not universal. Like, you can't really take an NFL guy and plug him right into a high school setting and think he's going to be extremely successful and be able to relate to kids. It's a totally different atmosphere, and vice versa. Another blog post was called The Most Valuable Traits of an NFL Head Coach. Another one was College Football Coaches and the 10 Qualities to be the Best. And then you've got 5 qualities of successful football coaches. So within that just simple Google search of me throwing in a question, what makes a good football coach? It spits out these 4 blog posts. So I go in and I read those, and I sort of comb through them, and I'm like sitting there thinking what I believe aligns with what they're saying, and then I start to take notes off of that. And then, like, those blog posts sort of are inspiring to me. They led me down, maybe a rabbit trail of, what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted my voice to say, because I didn't want it to be like that or what they were saying. I just wanted to see how they were formatting and then piecing it together and then add on to that or make it better. I didn't want to say the same thing. And also there's that component of reassurance that I'm actually, like, in what I'm doing, is it good? Is it even a thing? Will people even read it? Do people actually Google search this type of stuff? So there's that little piece too. So it was helpful in the sense of helping me to create and get going. Another thing that I was looking for, and then I got into like search engine optimization. How are people even going to find my stuff? And that's, I'll save that for another episode as far as like figuring out how Google works and like what you search for and what other people search for to find your things. But I wanted to see, what people were searching for in this like niche or niche. And one of the common themes was how to improve as a coach. That was a question that routinely was coming up. People weren't just looking for what makes a good football coach. They were looking for how to improve as a coach. So maybe you're already in the space, but how do I become better? So like when I was in the early stages of me coaching, that was one of the things that I was always looking for too. So mentally I had to revert back to those days. Like, what did I need back then? What were the questions that I was asking internally, but didn't have the resources provided for me to look at online? Maybe like Google wasn't as great of a tool then as it is now. You had to go to more clinics where you were like in person learning from other people, taking on more mentors instead of being able to use the internet as a teaching tool. I think in the coaching world, the internet is used more widely now. Technology in general is huge in sports, and if you're not using technology, you're sort of behind the curve. But today, you can find great resources that'll teach you what you want to know, whether you're a player or a coach. And what makes a good sports coach? So it's not limited to just football. It's just a sports coach in general, maybe even teachers. What makes them good? What do they all encompass? Those are the questions that other people are asking to Google that are related to the subject matter of what I wanted to talk about. So topics that were talked about within these Google searches that I found that I thought aligned with what I wanted to speak on. Things that I'm super passionate about that I think are vital when you're talking about coaching. Number one, so this is a list of things that I definitely had in common with what was already being said. Number one is confidence. If you're a coach, you need confidence in what you know and your deliverance. If you're not confident, your players are not going to believe you, and your message is not going to come across as strong. And you're not going to get out of the players or students as much as you want or hope to if you don't believe in what you're selling. And I think when we're talking about selling in general, marketing, whatever, if you don't believe in your product, if you don't believe in what story you're talking about, then it's not going to be relatable. People see through that. I was talking to somebody today at lunch, and they were talking about Stephen King, the great author. And one of his rules in writing is you don't ever write about things that you've never experienced. Like, you don't write about a place if you've never been there. Always write about places that you've been. And I think that is very relatable to what I'm saying here when in terms of being confident in your delivery. Study, have been in the situations that you're actually teaching. It's hard to relate. So like quarterback play, I've never coached quarterbacks. I've never played quarterback before, so it's hard for me to relate to that position. The good quarterback coaches are those that have actually played the positions. I coach primarily the positions that I played because I can relate to it a lot more, and I can tell stories and teach from experience, and I believe in those. It's harder for me to do that if I'm coaching quarterbacks. Now, over time, I can learn, but I've never stood behind center and took a snap and understood the pressure that comes at me from a defensive end that's, 50 to 100 pounds heavier than I am, and know that I could potentially get hit before I throw the ball. Like, I've never experienced that. So, bottom line, be confident. And number two, ability under pressure. How do you respond when pressure is on, when things are occurring, when times get tough, when adversity strikes? Do you have the ability to perform under that pressure, or do you fold? Do you emotionally check out? Do you become quiet? Do you become passive? Or do you rise to the occasion and you don't let the moment become bigger than you are? And that's something that you have to, exhibit as a coach. A great coach has the ability to operate under stressful environments. and they sort of thrive in those moments. Do you have the ability to focus? An iron focus where you're not shaken, where you can concentrate for longer periods of time. And then anxiety control. And I've talked about all these things in my blog post, so I don't want to elaborate too deeply into these because I've discussed it in writing. But good coaches have the ability to harness the anxieties that come on them. And by the way, we have the afternoon announcements back here coming on. So you may hear players coming in behind my door, and you might hear some sounds. But regardless, composure. Can you hold your composure together in those moments? And that goes back to the focus and the ability under pressure and everything. Self-awareness. Great coaches are good team builders. They're able to rally people together and build team and camaraderie, thought control, self-regulation, communication, or they're a great communicator. They're able to communicate with those who can handle a lot of information, highly intelligent players or students, and they're also able to relate to the people that can't retain that information as well. Can they relate to both types of people? Can they present information to the high-level student or player, and can they communicate information and get those students, players to respond and do what the coach asks? For those the lower level guys and girls, steadiness, consistency. Are they open and frank about things, or are they reserved and keep things close to the vest? And in my experience, I feel like when you're more open and you're frank about things and you don't hide certain information from others, that it's more relatable, and people respond to that type of coaching better than being somewhat passive or reserved. Do they have a sound, composed, competitive spirit, which I think is really good, by the way. And also philosophy. What does the coach believe in? I think all great coaches have a coaching philosophy, and they have a routine, and they put their players through it, and they believe in it. And that goes back to the whole confidence piece as well. So the things I just mentioned are things that were talked about in these other posts that I found through study that I completely agree with, and then I expand on those within the writing, and then made it into a blog post, and then eventually I've made it into a book as well. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper into those thoughts, go check out that as well. Unique ideas that I wanted to add on to what I've already said here, and then I've further discussed in the blog posts, are, study human behavior. Do coaches research how people think, how they respond? And I was mentioning the high-level kid versus the lower-level kid, or player, student. And do you connect with both of those people, and then all of the people that are in different categories around them? Do you understand how they work? Do you understand what inspires them? And then creativity, which I think is an enormous piece that I didn't understand early in my coaching career. But as you can tell, right here on this Post-it note, it says create. It's almost like a motto or a word that's inspiring to me. Like every day, create something. And I try in my coaching career, towards the end, is get my kids to create in and off the field. Be creative in the way that you play the game. Be creative in your own personal life. And I think when you're creative, it creates happiness. Because you're putting something into the world of value, and it gives you meaning and purpose. And I think so many people don't have that in their lives, and if they found something that they can create and give to the world would be a happier place. And I expand on all that in my writings as well. I talk about being humble and not having a significant ego. Like when you have success, how do you remain humble and not let the ego get to the best of you? And then you have, coaches are great, or good coaches are good talent evaluators. They know what to look for, how people respond in certain situations. Are they playmakers? Or, are they good teammates and that type of thing? And all that goes into talent and what makes up talent, because there are very many pieces there. Both players and coaches, by the way. You have to evaluate your coaches as well. Organizers, everything from practice plans to creating calendars for the year, to setting up camps, off-season agendas, creating workouts. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And then you get into delegation as well, like being organized and being able to delegate responsibility, empower those around you as well to help you, because you can't do it all if you're a head coach, or if you're a coordinator in any capacity. And then something that's really relevant in today's society or sports world is social media. You have to be a savant when it comes to social media. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you did not. But if you want to sell your program and yourself, it is by far the number one tool to do that. You don't have to rely on the local newspaper anymore. You have to push your message, and if you don't, you're going to be behind. And the message that gets sent typically is the message that remains in the community that doesn't always see everything that is occurring within the organization itself. So take the opportunity, use that platform or multiple platforms to sell yourself, to sell you as a coach, to sell your program. It's a phenomenal tool, and if used correctly, can be an amazing piece. I didn't think that 5 to 10 years ago. 100% believe that now, and I talk about that in greater length within the blog post. And then you've got public speaking, being able to talk, be comfortable in front of others, teach messages, be a great storyteller, and that's how you inspire your team, your community, your coaching staff, the school maybe that you coach at, and so forth. I'll talk about comedic relief. Can you provide comedy in moments of tension? And I think that's very important, because it's like reading the room. If the room is tense, how can I bring relief? And a lot of times that comes through comedy in any type. If the room's too loose, how do I bring maybe a little bit more, business-like mentality? Maybe you need to bring in a little bit of tension because things have wavered and become too relaxed. You get into pregame speeches, when you're talking about this type of, and creating the mood of the team before a game. To me, I think they're overrated. I think they have their place, but I don't think you should put a ton of stock into a pregame speech if you're a coach, because I think sometimes you as a coach can get amped up, and then it takes you out of your game, and you're not as focused. And then it could potentially get your team too hopped up where they can't concentrate, and then they have to level back out. And then you have, this environment where you may start too fast or too slow. Sometimes you may just want your players to naturally find flow, and you don't need to force it. It depends on the game, depends on the situation. It has its place, but don't put too much stock into it. I go into that in greater depth in the writings. Let's see what else. Relationship building and maintaining relationships is vital. Collaboration. So all of that works together. Collaborating with your coaching staff especially, or your administration. Making sure everybody's on the same page and you're working for the greater good. One of the biggest things I believe in is that your staff, their number one job is to support the head coach's mission. And that is vital. And that goes for administration as well. You have to work together and understand that we're all working towards one thing. And we should all be selling the same message and being on the same page. Some other topics, routine and how vital that is. As a coach, you got to you have to have some form of routine. There are too many moving parts to not have a routine. If you're unorganized and you're bouncing all over the place, you're not going to be consistent, which doesn't lead to a whole lot of victories long term. It's not sustainable. Routines create sustainability. I talk about that in greater length. A way of talking, speaking, vocally. What does your voice sound like? How do you deliver messages? What are the words that you choose to use? What are the stories that you share with them? I mean, does it have a theme? I think the tone of voice, the voice inflections, the highs and the lows, it's almost like you're singing. And I think that is so important whenever you're speaking to a team, an individual, a crowd. What do you sound like? Sound is so important. Because it creates energy and it can be inspiring. And, it's something that you got to think about. It plays a role. You don't want it to be unnatural. You don't want it to be forced, but it does matter. In my time as a coach and even a player, and then even when I work, I tend to gravitate towards people that have like a good voice. I gravitate towards music where people have a great voice, a good sound. I mean, I think as a human being, that's just natural. So what do you sound like? I think that's half the reason I'm speaking into a microphone right now is because I want my sound to sound better. I don't want it to sound like I'm way back here and it not sound very good. So a way of talking, talk about that quite a bit. And then surround yourself with high-quality character coaches, mentors, people of that have values, that want to make the world a better place, that talk about ideas, and they're people of action, that mean well, that are goal-oriented, that want to win, that want to see others win as well. Surround yourself with terrific individuals, the best of the best. That's who I want to be around, and I think that's what good coaches should want as well. The staff should be made up of people that are like-minded and moving in the same direction. And then I think the last thing on my list, the last thing on the list here, is just a staff assembly. Whenever you're assembling a staff and you're putting your coaching staff together, or you're maybe potentially being interviewed for a job to be on a staff, there's a cohesion there that has to exist. And it goes back to just wanting to be around people that you want to work with and that has goals in mind, and everybody's moving in the same direction, and they're mission-oriented, and they're there for purpose, and they're not there because of ego or anything like that. To improve their standing. They're there to make the team better. And I think that's priority number one, to bring value to the room, to be a student, and understand that every time they sit in a room or they stand in the front of a room, it's a learning opportunity for themselves as well. Even though they may be the ones speaking, it's always an opportunity to learn from the energy of the room, learn from the other coaches when they speak, learn from the players, and they're always open-minded. They're not disengaged. They're always looking for a way to be better as human beings for themselves and for others. So that, my friends, is the outline of the elite football coach, is what I called it. Looking back on it, I'm like, that's a lame name. I'm not a big fan of the initial name. So what I've done is, when I made this book, I sort of altered the name because going back to like the creation part and artistic part of all this, I think when you think about coaching, for me, you're creating in so many ways, especially when you're delivering information. Like, I'm always changing how I'm going to present something. I'm not boxing myself for like there is no fixed way of teaching. You always have to have the ability to adapt and create. So what I did was, when I was labeling the book or making it the cover, I changed the name of the book to The Art of Coaching, because I think there is such an enormous artistic piece to it, and I wanted to make that very clear. So that's coming down the line, hopefully within the next month or so, and I'm going to release that, and you'll have the opportunity to comb through it and look at it, and I hope you enjoy it. And that's all for me today. Thanks for being with me, and we'll see you again next time.